Hello, my name is Diana Timashova, and today I want to present my course project on the topic Peculiarities of Translation of English Literature into Ukrainian during the New Age, based on Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice. One of the most common trends in communication process in modern world in translation, which in turns is based on principle of the translation model as an act of interlingual communication. This issue is quite common and relevant not only in the field of philology but also in other areas, which on its part cause the need for more detailed study of this issue and various studies in these areas. The history of Ukrainian translation as an independent branch in the period of 18th-19th centuries, which has a new period, is quite controversial since it is based on different historical facts and beliefs. That is why in our work we have highlighted the peculiarities of translation English language literature into Ukrainian during the New Age period based on Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice. The relevance of the scientific research is due to the fact that there are a large number of variants of translation of fiction into different languages, but the study of methods used by the author in the translation English language literature into Ukrainian, primarily grammatical transformation, has not been fully covered so far. Scientific novelty consists in the fact that the problem of correlation of the original work and its translation describing the same area, namely the middle of the 19th century, is not considered in a sufficient detail. The object of the research is the specific of translation of Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice into Ukrainian in the period of the New Age. The subject of the research is a comparative analysis of the original and translated text of Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice. The aim of this research is to conduct a comparative analysis of the text and to study the peculiarities of translation of English language literature in the New Age period using Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice as an example. The aim of our work necessitates the following practical tasks: to consider the periods of fiction and translation, define the concept of New Age and set its time frame, and review the history of translation in England in the 18th and 19th centuries, identify the main methods and techniques of Ukrainian language fiction and provide their analysis, and to analyze the difference in the translation of the New Age texts into Ukrainian and Russian. The material for the study was Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice, as well as its translation into Ukrainian by Горбатько, and Russian by Marshak. The theoretical significance of the work lays in the fact that this research contributes to the development of linguoculturology, translation theory, history of the Ukrainian literary language of the 19th century. The practical significance of this work lays in the fact that its results can find application in the course on linguoculturology and translation theory. In the course of theoretical research, we found out that while translating any text, a set of certain methods is used, but one of these methods is central and determines the further nature of the relationship between the original text and the already translated one. We have considered fiction as a rather multifaceted concept that covers a long period of time and distinguishes 7 main periods in the history of its formation. Having analyzed in detail each of these literary periods and the characteristic, we came to the conclusion that author in question, namely Jane Austen, wrote in the period of modernism. And we have also investigated the concept of New Age. We found that the chronological boundaries of this concept span from the 17th to the 19th centuries. In the practical study, we have identified that the process of translating that names of literary works is rather complicated, such a situation has developed against the background of the fact that a novel's future success depends on its title, primarily from a commercial point of view, since a title can influence the number of copies sold, which is why a large number of titles have been changed. There are also informative titles which are primarily aimed at revealing the theme, the subject matter, or naming the locations. Or protagonists. This title account for approximately 35% of the total number of titles, and the title of Jane Austen's work was studied, Pride and Prejudice, was translated using a symbolic style which compared to informative style account for only 20%, as we can see, of all other works. We came to this conclusion because the title is conscious, meaningful, and clearly reproduces the main theme of the work. Having analyzed the meaning of the title, its semantic load, and the meaning of individual words in it using 5 different online dictionaries, we concluded that the most successful Ukrainian translation of its title is Гордість та упередження. As we know, translation is closely related to the stylistic and aims to explain what the text means. We have found that the functional style is divided into 2 main categories, namely colloquial and bookish, and the last in turn is divided into scholarly, formal, business, fiction, and journalistic. Having analyzed the lexical and semantic features of each of these styles, we came to the conclusion that the text we studied belongs to the fiction style, as it has all its inherent characteristics. From the lexical point of view, it contains colloquial language, emotional and expressive references, abbreviation, and dialects, and from the semantic point of view, comparisons, participles and adjectives, clauses, nominative, compound, and exclamatory sentences. 4 main types of translation transformations. In order to produce a high quality of any text, the translator must prevent a large number of interlingual transformations, translated transformations. 4 main types of translation transformations can be distinguished, namely transpositions, substitutions, additions, and omissions. Let's consider each element individually. A transposition is a change in the position of language elements in the text in relation to the original text. These elements are single words, phrases, expressions, word combinations, parts of compound words, and sometimes entire words in relation to the whole text. Let's look at the example. If we make haste, said Lydia, as they walked along, perhaps we may see something of Captain Carter before he goes. The Ukrainian version is «Якщо ми не баритимемося, сказала дорогою Лідія, то ми, може, навіть устигнемо трохи побачитися з капітаном Картером, доки він не поїхав до Лондона». And Russian version is «Если мы поторопимся, снова и снова повторяла Лидия, мы, быть может, еще успеем застать капитана Картера». One of the most common types of grammatical transformations when translating a text is substitution. When considering grammatical and lexical substitution, it should be noted that both grammatical units, word forms, parts of speech, sentence members, and lexical units can be substituted in the process of translation. Not only individual lexical units, but also entire constructions can be substituted. Let's look at the example. Whatever appears efficiently to cunning is despicable. The Ukrainian is все, що має хоч якесь відношення до хитрощів, викликає огиду. And Russian презренно все, что сродни коварству. The English example, another one, is Bingley was quite uncomfortable. Ukrainian translation is Bingley місця собі не знаходив. And the Russian, Mr. Bingley, метался по гостиной и не находил себе места. A common grammatical transformation in the translation of fictional text is when an English adjective is replaced with an adverb in order to emphasize meaning and convey a more precious meaning of epithets. For example, Charles writes in the most careless way imaginable. Ukrainian is Charles пишет так недбало, and Russian Charles действительно пишет настолько небрежно, что трудно себе даже представить. When translating text, there are also cases of what is known as authorial understatement, where the translator has to add words from the context in order to make the translation clearer. From the English grammar point of view, this phenomenon can be characterized as ellipsis, the omission of words, which occurs quite often in English texts. The following is an example of such a translation. Perhaps that is not possible for anyone. Мені здається, що будь-яка особистість має схильність до певної хиби. And, должно быть, ни один из смертных не в силах обладать сразу всеми этими пороками. The last type of grammatical transformation is omission. In the most translations, semantically redundant words are omitted, denote something that can be understood from the text set out earlier. In most cases, the words that are omitted are close in meaning to those to next to them in the sentences or are completely synonyms. For example, why, with so evident a desire of offending and insulting me, you choose to tell me that you liked me against your will. The Ukrainian translation is «Як це ви, з явним наміром принизити мене, насмілилися сказати, що любите мене попри свою волю». And the Russian translation is «Почему с таким явным желанием оскорбить меня вы против своей воли решили сказать, что я вам нравлюсь?» Having carried out the analysis of differences and grammatical transformations in the translation of New Age texts into Ukrainian and Russian, we came to the conclusion that the original text was translated with grammatical and lexical changes, using many different techniques, but the style of author's writing and the basic meaning of the novel were preserved and clearly reproduced. Thank you for your attention.